Trump's Epstein files, a political conundrum. Let's start with an uncomfortable truth. The saga of Jeffrey Epstein isn't just unfinished business, it's a political landmine. And Donald Trump is desperate for you to stop digging. But here's the twist most people overlook. Trump himself is largely to thank for keeping the conversation alive. Despite President Donald Trump's attempts to distance himself, the Epstein files remain the talk of the town. A central reason? Trump's loud and repeated denials, or more accurately, his insistence that there's nothing left to uncover about Epstein, a man widely recognized as a pedophilic trafficker and, notably, someone who once moved in Trump's social circle. The more he pushes back, the more curious the public becomes. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Trump didn't just respond to questions about Epstein, he actively spotlighted the controversy. On the campaign trail, and often flanked by key supporters, he promised to shine a light on the so-called Epstein conspiracy. This was more than a passing comment. It was a calculated pledge aimed squarely at winning over voters who thrive on conspiratorial thinking. Remember how he dangled the promise of releasing the JFK assassination files? Same playbook. It's a clear strategy. Stoke intrigue, make grand promises and keep the base fired up, even if you can't, or won't, deliver. But making bold commitments to conspiracy-minded audiences can be a double-edged sword. Sure, it energizes a passionate crowd, some of whom deeply distrust traditional power structures. But eventually the bill comes due. Now, with persistent questions about Epstein's connections and those elusive files, the Trump camp faces precisely the backlash they invited. Essentially, they lit the fuse, and now they're scrambling as the sparks fly. Sympathetic? Not really. It's a mess of their own creation. Here's the part most folks gloss over. As a conservative myself, I never obsessed over the Epstein conspiracy. But even I find it odd how unsettled Trump acts whenever Epstein's name surfaces, especially given their documented association. It seems clear. Trump is frustrated by a never-ending demand for answers that possibly don't exist, and maybe never did. Let's not forget. Trump very publicly pledged to release the Epstein files. High-profile figures like Pam Bondi, now Attorney General, Kash Patel, the current FBI director, and Dan Bongino, now Deputy FBI Director, have all made headlines with bold statements about those documents. Their promises fueled expectations that explosive revelations were just around the corner. Pam Bondi, in particular, made a spectacle of releasing binder after binder. Information that ultimately proved underwhelming. There was no blockbuster client list, no concrete new evidence. At one point, Bondi claimed she had the infamous list right on her desk during a media appearance. Since then, she's quietly backpedaled. And this is the part most people miss. It's not just about what was or wasn't in those binders. The whole spectacle directly appealed to a faction of the political right deeply invested in conspiracy theories, particularly when they seem to implicate high-profile figures like the Clintons. Up to now, Trump's own personal and professional ties to Epstein have been largely ignored, until very recently. Could this selective scrutiny itself be a topic worth discussing? So what's the fallout? The conspiracy crowd, once fired up by Trump's pledges, now feels duped. Some suspect that the administration's unkept promises mean they're somehow involved in covering things up, instead of accepting the possibility that perhaps no shocking information ever existed. Here's a controversial take. Is the